I'm back. This is what I was looking for, because as you notice in the recipe, and I think I mentioned it before, we're going to beat the eggs before we add them to the butter and the sugar. So here we go. Just lightly, you don't want to pound them. The eggs actually help the cake to rise, and they also moisten it. Many cakes only call for 2 eggs, but because this is such an ooey gooey, chewy cake, we're putting 4 eggs into it. So with our mixer running on low, we're adding the eggs. And mixing the eggs into the butter and the sugar. This will kind of turn a pale yellow color as the eggs, sugar, and the butter, margarine actually, mix together. So once that's done, the next step is really one of the fun parts, and that is to add our whole 16-ounce can of Hershey's chocolate syrup. So I'm going to put the mixer on very low so it doesn't splatter, and I'm going to pour, I hope you can see that, I'm pouring the chocolate syrup into the mixing bowl. Once it gets going, I can turn the speed of the mixer up higher, and I have to talk louder. I'm actually going to stop for a minute, pick up the beater. I'm going to take my spatula to scrape inside the can and pour out every last drop of that wonderful Hershey syrup. There we go. And while the beater is up, I'm going to take the spatula and go around the rim of my mixing bowl just to make sure that everything has gotten mixed in. And now I'm going to start the batter, the beating again. Here we go. Boys and girls, it's really important. That's really done. It's really important when you're making a cake like this that even though this looks so tempting and you might think you're just going to take your finger and take a lick, it's really important that you not lick either the batter, the spatula, the mixing bowl at all, because remember, it has raw egg in it that has never been cooked. And as I said to begin with, you really can get sick from raw eggs. Eggs tend to have some bacteria on them that gets killed once the egg is cooked, but in this state, you don't want to be licking anything from this cake bowl. It's tempting, but you're not going to do it, right? Right. Okay, so now it's time for us to add our vanilla. Turn on your mixer, get out your measuring spoon. How much vanilla? 1 teaspoon. Pouring it, whoop, little too much, but that's okay, it'll just make the cake sweeter. So there goes our vanilla, it's mixed in. And the next step, if you remember, oh, I don't know if I told you this, but it is written in the recipe. This is 1 teaspoon of baking powder. You don't just take it out of the baking powder tin and add it to the cake. You must put it in a little dish and then stir it around a little bit, because baking powder can clump into like little tiny knots. And believe it or not, baking powder, which like the eggs helps the cake to rise, and that's why we're adding it to the batter, it also has a very bitter taste. So if a clump of it would get into the batter and bake in one spot of the cake, and then you would get that piece of cake, it wouldn't taste so ooey gooey, chewy, and wonderful. So we've mixed our baking powder to make sure there were no lumps, sprinkling it gently into the mixer, making sure that that's fully mixed. And now comes a very important part. We're going to put 1 cup of cake flour into the batter. And I use some of it for dusting the bowl. So I'm going to put a little bit more in this measuring cup, tamp it down to make sure I've got a cup. And then keeping my mixer on low speed so it doesn't fly all over, I'm going to gently add, sprinkle it, let it get blended, sprinkle a little more, tap it all out. And once it gets going, you can turn your mixer up higher. And that'll really get everything to mix together in a delicious way. You don't want to overbeat the batter, because that can kind of break down the eggs and the baking powder in a way that would make the cake not rise and be as high as we want it to be when all is said and done. At this point, you'll notice I turned off my mixer, I'm taking the beater out, and I'm scraping again around the outside of the bowl, just to make sure that any of the baking powder or vanilla didn't get tossed up on the side and isn't getting fully integrated, mixed into the cake batter. And once I've done that, I'm going to turn it on one last time. Mix, mix, mix. It already smells so good. Turn off my mixer. Take the beater out. I'm going to tap it a little bit and actually scrape off any extra batter that maybe has accumulated and stuck to it, because we want every drop of this to go into our cake pan and be a part of our cake. So here we go. This is the lovely chocolate batter that we're going to use. And this is what we're going to do next. Scraping the sides of the pan again. And remember, the mixing bowl. And remember, this pan has a tube in the middle of the tube pan. And we don't want to get any batter dripping on this part. So very carefully, you're going to watch me pour this batter all the way around the edge of the pan. Here we go. And I will be scraping along so that I don't miss one drop. Here we go. I'm tempted to lick this, but I'm not going to, because I don't trust that those eggs, even though they were very fresh, I actually got them at the farmer's market, I don't trust that they couldn't just have some speckle of bacteria. Here goes the last bit of batter. Yummy, yummy. So now we've got our tube pan. I can't tilt it because I don't want to cause the batter to stir up on the sides. But it's in there. You can even tap it once just to make sure the air bubbles are out. And then I'm going to take this pan, put it in my 325-degree oven, rack in the middle of the oven. And now I'm going to set my timer for 50 minutes to check it. I'll be back in 50 minutes and I'll show you how to test whether your cake is done. See ya!